Pyotr Bagration was a Georgian prince of Kartli. The kingdom, now part of Georgia, became a protectorate of Russia in 1783, and Bagration enlisted in the Imperial Russian Army. Amid its participation in the Napoleonic Wars, he rose to become a prominent general. He was the husband of Metternich's lover Catherine and the alleged lover of Tsar Alexander's sister Catherine. During the French invasion of Russia, he commanded the left wing at the decisive Battle of Borodino, where he was mortally wounded. He was subsequently portrayed favorably in Tolstoy's War and Peace. His name in the Georgian language was Pyotr Bagration, pronounced Baratini, or Bagratione with no significant stress. His title, Prince, translates the Georgian title Batanishvili or his honorary Russian title Knyaz. The Russian form of his name, Pyotr or Petr Ivanovich Bagration, includes a patronym based on his father's name Ivana. The Russian surname is pronounced Bration, roughly Brution. In English, it is also alternately pronounced Brien, or Brtsion. Life. Peter was born in 1765 to a prince of the Murani branch of the Georgian Bagrationi dynasty, Colonel Prince Ivan Bagration, who was the eldest son of Ishak Beg, an illegitimate son of King Jesse of Kartli, a realm in what is now central Georgia. In 1762, Kartli was reunified with neighboring Kakheti upon its inheritance by the Kakhetian king Heraclius II. His younger brother Roman joined the Chugach Cossack regiment as a Yadnik at the age of 13 in 1791. The next year, Peter joined him, enlisting as a sergeant in the Kavsansk Rifles of the Astrakhan Infantry Regiment. Both would go on to become generals of the Imperial Russian Army. Pyotr Bagration served for some years in the Russian-Circassian War. He participated in the siege of Ochakov. In 1792 he was commissioned as a captain and transferred to the Kiev Cavalry Regiment that year as a second major, transferring as a full first major to the Sofievsky Carabineers on 15 May 1794. He served in the military campaign to suppress the Polish Kosciuszko uprising of 1794. He received successive promotions to lieutenant colonel, to colonel and to major general. His merits were recognized by Suvorov, whom he accompanied in the Italian and Swiss campaigns of 1799, winning particular distinction by the capture of the town of Brescia. From 1798 to 1799, he commanded the 6th Chasseurs. From 1801 to 1802, he commanded the Chasseurs of the Imperial Guard. Then from 1802 to 1805, he served as GOC Jaeger Brigade. In 1800, the Tsar Paul unexpectedly married him off to Catherine Pavlovna Skavronskaya, the favorite niece of Grigory Potemkin and one of the Tsarina Maria's ladies-in-waiting. Bagration and Catherine had been casually involved, but the marriage was a failure. The young and lovely Catherine soon preferred traveling and, in 1805, fled to Vienna, where her salon and running affair with Clemens von Metternich, who called her the Naked Angel, permitted her to serve as an important agent of Russian intelligence and diplomacy. Bagration was obliged by the Tsar to claim their daughter as his own and to subsidize thousands of rubles of Catherine's debts. He had a reputation as a heavy gambler, as well, and was forced to sell estates to cover losses that rose as high as 80,000 rubles. In the wars of 1805, Bagration's achievements appeared even more brilliant. When Napoleon ordered Murat to break an armistice he had just signed with Bagration, the general was able to successfully resist the repeated attacks of forces 5 times his own numbers under Murat and Lanus at Shongrab and near Hollabrunn. Though Bagration lost half of the men under his command, their stand protected the retreat of the main army under Kutuzov to Olmutz. When Kutuzov was overruled and forced into battle at Austerlitz, Bagration commanded the advance guard of the Prince Liechtenstein's column and defended the Allied right against Lanus while the left attacked Napoleon's deliberately undefended right flank. He was promoted to lieutenant general in 1805, and in 1807 fought bravely and obstinately at the battles of Eylau, Heilsberg, and Friedland. He was successful as commander of both Russia's Finnish campaign in 1808 and Turkish campaign in 1809. In the former, he captured the Åland Islands by a daring march across the frozen Gulf of Finland. His rapid transfer to the distant Moldavian front against the Ottoman Empire has been seen as a reprimand for an alleged affair with the Tsarevna, Catherine, who was married off shortly thereafter. While there, he led the Russian army at Rasoir in Tartaritsa and was promoted to full general of infantry. In 1812, Bagration commanded the Second Army of the West. A few days before Napoleon's invasion on the 24th of June, he suggested to Alexander I a preemptive strike into the Duchy of Warsaw. Though defeated at Mogilev, Bagration led his forces to join the First Army at Smolensk under Barclay de Tolly, to whom he ceded overall command of both armies on the 2nd of August. Bagration led the left wing at the Battle of Borodino, where he constructed a number of flèches due to a shortage of engineer officers, though these were poorly designed. During the battle he received a mortal wound and later died on the 24th of September, in the village of Simi, which belonged to his aunt. It is said that, while wounded, Bagration kept giving orders to the troops without knowing that the Russian army was abandoning Moscow. When he finally heard the truth, Bagration was so shocked that he rapidly stood up, totally forgetting about his grave wound. Such an act was too much for his severely wounded body, and it quickly cost Bagration his life. Napoleonic wars in Europe. Battles of Hollabrunn and Austerlitz in the course of the War of the Third Coalition. Napoleon's defeat of General Mack's Austrian army at Ulm on 19 October 1805 led Kutuzov to consider withdrawing and uniting his forces with reinforcements arriving at Brunn. Kutuzov ordered Bagration to guard Vienna with just a single regiment in order to stall a possible French assault. The French marshals Murat and Lannes made a false armistice claim to position themselves near the Danube at Vienna. When the guards were distracted, they rushed over the bridge to secure the town. Kutuzov was in a hurry to unite his army with the Russian troops commanded by Buxtehude, so he needed a diversion to delay the French advance. Bagration then took command of the Russian army's rearguard to do so. His combined Russo-Austrian force numbered less than 7,500 men, facing a foe more than 5 times the size. Bagration took up a position 6 kilometers north of Hollabrunn, on the hill north above the small town of Schongrabin, and formed a large line in order to make the French believe the entire Russian army stood before them. In fact, Marshal Murat hesitated to attack and later even agreed to an offer from Bagration to negotiate an armistice, halting the entire French assault without informing Napoleon. This gave Kutuzov valuable time to save his army. When Napoleon found out what had happened, he became enraged at Murat's obstinate behavior and ordered him to immediately continue his attack on the enemy, ending the armistice on November 16. The vanguard of Lanz's and Murat's 45,000 men attacked Bagration's position numerous times and were repelled each time, unable to take the hill for about 6 hours. At one point General Bagration personally led counter-attacks, driving the French back. Even though his force suffered heavy casualties and total destruction seemed inevitable, Bagration managed to skillfully maneuver his remaining troops out of the area and to unite with the rest of the coalition army at Brunn on 18 November 1805. His actions prevented the Russian army from being cut off and destroyed. Just 2 weeks later, on December 2, 1805, the opposing armies would meet at Austerlitz. This time Bagration assumed command over the coalition army's 13,000 men strong right wing, opposing Lannes' equally strong French left wing. In the chaotic battle which the Russo-Austrian forces were losing to Napoleon's superior strategy and tactics, Bagration's forces were not an exception in suffering defeat, as most of the coalition forces started breaking or retreating. Bagration too ordered his men to retreat after he did not achieve any progress against Marshal Lannes, even though his infantry fought bravely and fiercely. The battle was already lost, while Bagration saw no other option but to commence a strategic withdrawal. Marshal Murat refused Lannes' suggestion to further pursue him so that his corps didn't suffer greater losses. Battle of Eylau. General Bagration demonstrated his skills as military commander particularly clearly during the brutal Battle of Eylau, which took place in East Prussia on 7 and 8 February 1807 during the War of the Fourth Coalition. After destroying the Prussian army at Jena, Napoleon was pursuing Russian forces under Marshal Kamensky. In a series of inconclusive clashes, the French did not reach their ultimate goal of destroying the enemy, while the Russians successfully continued retreating. However, on January 7, 1805, General Levin August Count von Bennigsen assumed overall command of the Russian forces and carried out a successful surprise attack on the French left wing against Marshal Ney and further against Marshal Bernadotte. Bernadotte managed to evade destruction by winning the Battle of Morungen and by retreating. Napoleon saw an opportunity to envelop Bennigsen's unprotected left wing by instructing Bernadotte to keep retreating and allowing his army to cut off the Russians from their own retreat. By a stroke of luck, a group of Cossacks intercepted a French messenger carrying Napoleon's orders to Bernadotte and quickly reported to General Bagration. Bagration then informed Bennigsen, who immediately halted his offensive and retreated. The French pursued, and after several engagements finally confronted the entire Russian army at Eylau on 7 February 1807. Bagration occupied high ground a mile in front of the town, facing Marshal Soult's 4th Corps and Marshal Murat's cavalry. The combined French forces assaulted the plateau, but Bagration's heavily outnumbered troops repulsed them. The general demanded bitter resistance from his men in order to gain time for Bennigsen's heavy artillery to pass through Eylau and to join the Russian army in its position beyond it. During the afternoon, the French were reinforced by Marshal Augereau's corps and by the Imperial Guard, making up about 45,000 soldiers in all. Under pressure from greatly superior numbers, Bagration finally conducted an orderly retreat to join the main Russian army. Russian forces under General Barclay de Tolly covered the retreat. Even at that point, despite having amassed a huge force, the French were not able to achieve more than driving Bagration and his small force of valiantly resisting Russian infantry off the plateau. Due to Bagration's brilliantly executed maneuvers, the Russian army was once again able to survive and to prepare itself for an upcoming battle. In 1946, Soviet authorities renamed the town of Preußische Eylau as Bagrationovsk in honor of Pyotr Bagration and of his remarkable skills as a tactician. Finnish War. Initial assault. During the Finnish War from 1808 to 1809, Bagration commanded the 21st Division of the Russian forces under Buxhoveden. Not wanting to wait until Sweden had concentrated a large army in Finland, the Russian Empire took initiative and decided to take action. On the night of the 9th of September, Russian troops crossed the border to Finland and launched an offensive. Bagration's 21st Division was forming the Russian center and moving ahead in order to quickly seize Hämeenlinna, Tampere and Pori. Under pressure of the swift advance, the Swedish forces began a hasty retreat to the depths of Finland and were pursued relentlessly. Bagration's men had to endure worst weather conditions, severe frost, snowstorms and forest debris. In addition, the retreating Swedes were constructing obstacles and destroyed any possible food source as well as roads. Nevertheless, Bagration's division overcame those obstacles and took all objectives: Hämeenlinna on February 22, Tampere on March 1 and Pori on 6 March 1808. Bagration managed to advance over a distance of 200 kilometers and capture 3 cities in just 8 days and securing the way to the Gulf of Bothnia. His maneuver split the Swedish forces in two, a northern and southern group. providing the Russians the possibility to strike each group one after another. Bagration correctly assessed the situation that the main Swedish force was in the north and intended to turn his division for an attack. But the commander-in-chief Buxhovden foiled that plan by miscalculating the situation and assaulting the southern Swedish group, which had itself fortified in numerous fortifications, with his superior force, including the 21st Division of Bagration. This allowed the main Swedish force to retreat unharmed to Oulu. Despite that, Bagration himself still achieved success by capturing the strategically important Turku province. In September 1808, Bagration became ill and was forced to leave the theatre of operation. He was keenly interested in the events and hastily returned as soon as he became fit for service again. Upon arrival, he was appointed commander of the Russian forces defending the west coast of Finland. Swedish assault on Turku. In September 1808, the Swedish command decided to land troops on Turku in order to distract attention from the northern Russian front that threatened the Swedish main army and to secure the southern part of the west coast of Finland. A 2,500-men-strong advance guard arrived at the Åland Islands and from there departed for the Turku coast. Bagration made a timely response and quickly threw the Swedes back to the sea. The Swedish leadership decided to take Turku at all cost to be able to create a bridgehead for reinforcements. King Gustav IV arrived at the Åland Islands to personally supervise the operation. On the 14th of September, a Swedish vanguard of 5,000 men was landing on Turku. Bagration was carefully monitoring the enemy's activities and allowed the Swedish troops to set foot on shore before he commenced a full assault, which destroyed the entire enemy force, leaving only a few who could escape with boats. By the end of 1808, suffering heavy casualties, the Swedish troops were in full retreat and the area of Finland completely cleared of them. Despite those setbacks, the Kingdom of Sweden was not ready to give up the fight. Battle for the Åland Islands. In 1809, the Russian command had decided to take the war to the territory of Sweden in order to finally crush her army. For the conclusion, the Russian army was divided into three operational groups, that of Pyotr Bagration, Barclay de Tolly and Peter Shuvalov. Bagration's 17,000-men-strong corps consisted of 30 infantry battalions, 4 cavalry squadrons, 600 Cossacks and 20 guns. The main assault was to be carried out by him in one of the most daring marches in military history. His route suggested to enter the frozen Gulf of Bothnia from Turku, reach and capture the heavily fortified Åland Islands, which was garrisoned by about 10,000 Swedish troops, and finally continue on the frozen sea, towards Stockholm. Knowing about the great difficulties he had to overcome, Bagration carefully planned his campaign and managed to supply his troops with fresh food, warm clothes, ammunition, and weapons. The expedition was ready on February 26 in 1809 and began on the next day. The offensive against the islands was carried out in 5 attack columns, 4 engaged in a frontal assault, while the 5th bypassed Åland from the south. The Swedish troops did not put up much resistance and rather planned to retreat to the Big Island from where they intended to stop Bagration's advance. In order to do so, the Swedish commander General Carl von Dobeln decided to enter negotiations for an armistice. Bagration, however, refused, convinced that the sole purpose of von Dobeln's offer was to delay his movements, and after completing negotiations, ordered his troops to advance at an even faster pace. Fearing an encirclement, General von Dobeln started abandoning the Åland Islands and being pursued by Bagration's troops. The retreat quickly turned into a devastating rout, leaving a lot of ammunition, weapons and equipment behind. Bagration calculated an intimidation maneuver, ordering a 400-men-strong cavalry detachment under Major General Yakov Kulnev to pursue the Swedes beyond their own shores. Kulnev managed to take the Swedish town of Grishlam, which was just 70 kilometers away from Stockholm. This unexpected turn of events brought shock and confusion to the Swedish leadership and population, as everyone was surprised to hear of Russian troops on Swedish soil. Stockholm was being fortified, an army quickly put together and sent to intercept an enemy which wasn't actually there. The plan worked out beyond Bagration's expectations, as the psychological impact of Kulneff's little incursion into Sweden turned to be very decisive for the course of the entire war. Simultaneously, the other Russian corps also reached their goals, so that the Swedish side found itself in an environment of being forced into peace talks after losing all their claims in Finland. Gaining wide reputation for his actions in that conflict, Bagration was promoted to full general of infantry.